Table tennis, also known as ping pong, is a sport in which 2 or 4 players hit a lightweight ball back and forth across a table using a small paddle. The game takes place on a hard table divided by a net. Except for the initial serve, the rules are generally as follows. Players must allow a ball played toward them to bounce 1 time on the side of the table, and must return it so that it bounces on the opposite side at least once. A point is scored when a player fails to return the ball within the rules. Play is fast and demands quick reactions. Spinning the ball alters its trajectory and limits an opponent's options, giving the hitter a great advantage. Table tennis is governed by the worldwide organization International Table Tennis Federation, founded in 1926. ITTF currently includes 220 member associations. The table tennis official rules are specified in the ITTF handbook. Table tennis has been an Olympic sport since 1988, with several event categories. From 1988 until 2004, these were men's singles, women's singles, men's doubles and women's doubles. Since 2008, a team event has been played instead of the doubles. History. The sport originated in Victorian England, where it was played among the upper class as an after-dinner parlour game. It has been suggested that makeshift versions of the game were developed by British military officers in India in around 1860s or 1870s, who brought it back with them. A row of books stood up along the centre of the table as a net. 2 more books served as rackets and were used to continuously hit a golf ball. It had several different names, including whiff-waff. The name ping pong was in wide use before British manufacturer J. Jack and Amps Unlimited trademarked it in 1901. The name ping pong then came to describe the game played using the rather expensive jacks equipment, with other manufacturers calling it table tennis. A similar situation arose in the United States, where Jack sold the rights to the ping pong name to Parker Brothers. Parker Brothers then enforced the trademark for the term in the 1920s, making the various associations change the names to table tennis instead of the more common, but trademarked, term. The next major innovation was by James W. Gibb, a British enthusiast of table tennis, who discovered novelty celluloid balls on a trip to the US in 1901 and found them to be ideal for the game. This was followed by E. C. Good, who in 1901 invented the modern version of the racket by affixing a sheet of pimpled or stippled rubber to the wooden blade. Table tennis was growing in popularity by 1901 to the extent that tournaments were being organized, books being written on the subject, and an unofficial world championship was held in 1902. In 1921, the Table Tennis Association was founded in Britain, and the International Table Tennis Federation followed in 1926. London hosted the first official World Championships in 1926. In 1933, the United States Table Tennis Association, now called USA Table Tennis, was formed. In the 1930s, Edgar Snow commented in Red Star over China that the communist forces in the Chinese Civil War had a passion for the English game of table tennis, which he found bizarre. On the other hand, popularity of the sport waned in 1930s Soviet Union, partly because of promotion of team and military sports, and partly because of a theory that the game had adverse health effects. In the 1950s, paddles that used a rubber sheet combined with an underlying sponge layer changed the game dramatically, introducing greater spin and speed. These were introduced to Britain by sports goods manufacturer S.W. Hancock Limited. The use of speed glue increased the spin and speed even further, resulting in changes to the equipment to slow the game down. Table tennis was introduced as an Olympic sport at the Olympics in 1988. Rule changes. After the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, the ITTF instituted several rule changes that were aimed at making table tennis more viable as a televised spectator sport. First, the older 38mm balls were officially replaced by 40mm balls in October 2000. This increased the ball's air resistance and effectively slowed down the game. By that time, players had begun increasing the thickness of the fast sponge layer on the paddles, which made the game excessively fast and difficult to watch on television. A few months later, the ITTF changed from a 21-point to an 11-point scoring system, effective in September 2001. This was intended to make games more fast-paced and exciting. The ITTF also changed the rules on service to prevent a player from hiding the ball during service, in order to increase the average length of rallies and to reduce the server's advantage. Effective in 2002. For the opponent to have time to realize a serve is taking place, the ball must be tossed a minimum of 16 centimeters in the air. The ITTF states that all events after July 2014 are played with a new polymaterial ball equipment. The international rules specify that the game is played with a sphere having a mass of 2.7 grams and a diameter of 40 millimeters. The rules say that the ball shall bounce up 24 to 26 centimeters when dropped from a height of 30.5 centimeters onto a standard steel block, thereby having a coefficient of restitution of 0.89 to 0.92. The ball is made of celluloid plastic as of 2015, colored white or orange, with a matte finish. The choice of ball color is made according to the table color and its surroundings. For example, a white ball is easier to see on a green or blue table than it is on a gray table. Manufacturers often indicate the quality of the ball with a star rating system, usually from 1 to 3, 3 being the highest grade. As this system is not standard across manufacturers, the only way a ball may be used in official competition is upon ITTF approval. The 40mm ball was introduced after the 2000 Summer Olympics. However, this created some controversy at the time, as the Chinese national team argued that this was merely to give non-Chinese players a better chance of winning, since the new type of ball has a slower speed. China won all 4 Olympic gold medals and 3 silvers in 2000, and have continued to dominate. The table is 2.74 meters long, 1.525 meters wide, and 76 centimeters high, with any continuous material so long as the table yields a uniform bounce of about 23 centimeters when a standard ball is dropped onto it, from a height of 30 centimeters, or about 7 quintillion 1 quadrillion 770 trillion spade suits 77%. The table playing surface is uniformly dark-colored and matte, divided into 2 halves by a net at 15.25 centimeters in height. The ITTF approves only wooden tables of the derivates. Concrete tables with a steel net or a solid concrete partition are sometimes available in outside public spaces, such as parks. Paddle racket players are equipped with a laminated wooden racket covered with rubber on one or two sides depending on the grip of the player. The ITTF uses the term racket, though bat is common in Britain, and paddle in the US and Canada. The wooden portion of the racket, often referred to as the blade, commonly features anywhere between 1 and 7 plies of wood, though cork, glass fiber, carbon fiber, aluminum fiber, and Kevlar are sometimes used. According to the ITTF regulations, at least 85% of the blade by thickness shall be of natural wood. Common wood types include balsa, limber, and cypress or hinoki, which is popular in Japan. The average size of the blade is about 17 centimeters long and 15 centimeters wide. Although the official restrictions only focus on the flatness and rigidness of the blade itself, these dimensions are optimal for most play styles. Table tennis regulations allow different surfaces on each side of the racket. Various types of surfaces provide various levels of spinner speed, and in some cases they nullify spin. For example, a player may have a rubber that provides much spin on one side of the racket, and one that provides no spin on the other. By flipping the racket in play, different types of returns are possible. To help a player distinguish between the rubber used by his opposing player, international rules specify that one side must be red while the other side must be black. The player has the right to inspect his opponent's racket before a match to see the type of rubber used and what color it is. Despite high-speed play and rapid exchanges, a player can see clearly what side of the racket was used to hit the ball. Current rules state that, unless damaged in play, the racket cannot be exchanged for another racket at any time during a match. Gameplay. Starting a game according to ITTF Rule 2.13.1. The first service is decided by lot, normally a coin toss. It is also common for one player to hide the ball in one of the other hand, usually hidden under the table, allowing the other player to guess which hand the ball is in. The correct or incorrect guess gives the winner the option to choose to serve, receive, or to choose which side of the table to use. Service and return in gameplay. The player serving the ball commences a play. The server first stands with the ball held on the open palm of the hand, not carrying the paddle, called the free hand, and tosses the ball directly upward without spin, at least 16 centimeters high. The server strikes the ball with the racket on the ball's descent so that it touches first his court and then touches directly the receiver's court, without touching the net assembly. In casual games, many players do not toss the ball upward. However, this is technically illegal and can give the serving player an unfair advantage. The ball must remain behind the end line and above the upper surface of the table, known as the playing surface, at all times during the service. The server cannot use his/her body clothing to obstruct sight of the ball. The opponent and the umpire must have a clear view of the ball at all times. If the umpire is doubtful of the legality of a service, they may first interrupt play and give a warning to the server. If the serve is a clear failure or is doubted again by the umpire after the warning, the receiver scores a point. If the service is good, then the receiver must make a good return by hitting the ball back before it bounces a second time on receiver's side of the table so that the ball passes the net and touches the opponent's court, either directly or after touching the net assembly. Thereafter, the server and receiver must alternately make a return until the rally is over. Returning the serve is one of the most difficult parts of the game, as the server's first move is often the least predictable and thus most advantageous shot due to the numerous spin and speed choices at his/her disposal. Let is a rally of which the result is not scored, and is called in the following circumstances. The ball touches the net in service, provided the service is otherwise correct. The ball is obstructed by the player on the receiving side. Obstruction means a player touches the ball when it is above or traveling towards the playing surface, not having touched the player's court since last being struck by the player. When the player on the receiving side is not ready and the service is delivered, player's failure to make a service or a return or to comply with the laws is due to a disturbance outside the control of the player. Play is interrupted by the umpire or assistant umpire. A let is also called if the ball hits the server's side of the table if the ball does not pass further than the edge. If the ball hits the table edge and hits the net, it is called a foul serve. Scoring a point is scored by the player for any of several results of the rally. The opponent fails to make a correct service or return. After making a service or a return, the ball touches anything other than the net assembly before being struck by the opponent. The ball passes over the player's court or beyond his end line without touching his court after being struck by the opponent. The opponent obstructs the ball. The opponent strikes the ball twice successively. Note that the hand that is holding the racket counts as part of the racket and that making a good return off one's hand or fingers is allowed. It is not a fault if the ball accidentally hits one's hand or fingers and then subsequently hits the racket. The opponent strikes the ball with the side of the racket blade whose surface is not covered with rubber. The opponent moves the playing surface or touches the net assembly. The opponent's free hand touches the playing surface. As a receiver under the expedite system, completing 13 returns in a rally, the opponent that has been warned by the umpire commits a second offense in the same individual match or team match. If the third offense happens, 2 points will be given to the player. If the individual match or the team match has not ended, any unused penalty points can be transferred to the next game of that match. A game shall be won by the player first scoring 11 points unless both players score 10 points, when the game shall be won by the first player subsequently gaining a lead of 2 points. A match shall consist of the best of any odd number of games. In competition play, matches are typically best of 5 or 7 games. Alternation of services and ends. Service alternates between opponents every 2 points until the end of the game, unless both players score 10 points or the expedite system is operated. When the sequences of serving and receiving stay the same but each player serves for only 1 point in turn, the player serving first in a game receives first in the next game of the match. After each game, players switch sides of the table. In the last possible game of a match, for example the 7th game in a best-of-7 matches, players change ends when the first player scores 5 points, regardless of whose turn it is to serve. Service is subject to change on game point of the match. Upon the possible last point of the match, the player with the lesser score serves. If the sequence of serving and receiving is out of turn or the ends are not changed, points scored in the wrong situation are still calculated and the game shall be resumed with the order at the score that has been reached. Doubles game. In addition to games between individual players, pairs may also play table tennis. Singles and doubles are both played in international competition, including the Olympic Games since 1988 and the Commonwealth Games since 2002. In 2005, the ITTF announced that doubles table tennis only was featured as a part of team events in the 2008 Olympics. In doubles, all the rules of single play are applied except for the following. Service a line painted along the long axis of the table to create doubles courts bisects the table. This line's only purpose is to facilitate the double service rule, which is that service must originate from the right-hand box in such a way that the first bounce of the serve bounces once in said right-hand box, and then must bounce at least once in the opponent's side's right-hand box, or the receiving pair score a point. Order of play. Serving and receiving players must hit the ball in turn. For example, if A is paired with B, X is paired with Y, A is the server and X is the receiver. The order of play shall be A, X, B, Y. The rally proceeds this way until one side fails to make a legal return and the other side scores. At each change of service, the previous receiver shall become the server and the partner of the previous server shall become the receiver. For example, if the previous order of play is AXBY, the order becomes XBYA after the change of service. In the second of the latter games of a match, the game begins in reverse order of play. For example, if the order of play is AXBY at beginning of the first game, the order begins with XAYB or YBXA in the second game, depending on either a X or Y being chosen as the first server of the game. That means the first receiver of the game is the player who served to the first server of the game in the preceding game. In each game of a doubles match, the pair having the right to serve first shall choose which of them will do so. The receiving pair, however, can only choose in the first game of the match. When a pair reaches 5 points in the final game, the pairs must switch ends of the table and change the receiver to reverse the order of play. For example, when the last order of play before a pair score 5 points in the final game is AXBY, the order after change shall be AYBX if A still has the second serve. Otherwise, X is the next server and the order becomes XAYB. Expedite system. If a game is unfinished after 10 minutes play and fewer than 18 points have been scored, the expedite system is initiated. The umpire interrupts the game, and the game resumes with players serving for 1 point in turn. If the expedite system is introduced while the ball is not in play, the previous receiver shall serve first. Under the expedite system, the server must win the point before the opponent and makes 13 consecutive returns at the point goes to the opponent. The system can also be initiated at any time at the request of both players or pairs. Once introduced, the expedite system remains in force until the end of the match. A rule to shorten the time of a match. It is mainly seen in defensive players' games. Grips. Though table tennis players grip the rackets in various ways, their grips can be classified into two major families of styles: penholder and shake hand. The rules of table tennis do not prescribe the manner in which one must grip the racket, and numerous grips are employed. Penhold grip is so named because one grips the racket similarly to the way one holds a writing instrument. The style of play among penhold players can vary greatly from player to player. The most popular style, usually referred to as the Chinese penhold style, involves curling the middle ring and fourth finger on the back of the blade with the 3 fingers always touching one another. Chinese penholders favor a round racket head for a more over-the-table style of play. In contrast, another style, sometimes referred to as the Japanese Korean penhold grip, involves playing those 3 fingers out across the back of the racket, usually with all 3 fingers touching the back of the racket, rather than stacked upon one another. Sometimes a combination of the two styles occurs, wherein the middle ring and fourth fingers are straight but still stacked, or where all fingers may be touching the back of the racket, but are also in contact with one another. Japanese Korean penholders will often use a square-headed racket for and away from the table style of play. Traditionally, these square-headed rackets feature a block of cork on top of the handle, as well as a thin layer of cork on the back of the racket. For increased grip and comfort, penhold styles are popular among players originating from East Asian regions such as China, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. Traditionally, penhold players use only one side of the racket to hit the ball during normal play, and the side which is in contact with the last 3 fingers is generally not used. This configuration is sometimes referred to as traditional penhold, and is more commonly found in square-headed racket styles. However, the Chinese developed a technique in the 1990s in which a penholder uses both sides of the racket to hit the ball. where the player produces a backhand stroke known as a reverse penhold backhand by turning the traditional side of the racket to face oneself, and striking the ball with the opposite side of the racket. This stroke has greatly improved and strengthened the penhold style both physically and psychologically, as it eliminates the strategic weakness of the traditional penhold backhand. Shakehand. The shakehand grip is so named because the racket is grasped as if one is performing a handshake. Though it is sometimes referred to as the tennis or Western grip, it bears no relation to the Western tennis grip, which was popularized on the west coast of the United States, in which the racket is rotated 90 degrees, and played with the wrist turned so that on impact the knuckles face the target. In table tennis, Western refers to Western nations, for this is the grip that players native to Europe and the Americas have almost exclusively employed. The shakehand grip's simplicity and versatility, coupled with the acceptance among top-level Chinese trainers that the European style of play should be emulated and trained against, has established it as a common grip even in China. Many world-class European and Asian players currently use the shakehand grip, and it is generally accepted that shakehands is easier to learn than penholder, allowing a broader range of playing styles, both offensive and defensive. The Siemler grip is named after the American table tennis champion Danny Siemler, who used it. It is achieved by placing your thumb and index finger on either side of the bottom of the racket head and holding the handle with the rest of your fingers. Since only one side of the racket is used to hit the ball, two contrasting rubber types can be applied to the blade, offering the advantage of twiddling the racket to fool the opponent. Siemler paired inverted rubber with anti-spin rubber. Many players today combine inverted and long-pipped rubber. The grip is considered exceptional for blocking, especially on the backhand side, and for forehand loops of backspin balls. The Siemler grip's popularity reached its apex in 1985 when 4 of the United States' 5 participants in the World Championships used it.